My name is Tula Meadows. I'm 28 years old, and 4 months ago, at my own birthday dinner, my father looked me in the eyes in front of 43 people and said, "I wish you were never born." The candles on my cake were still burning when he said it. No one stopped him. No one spoke. My stepmother nodded like he had just confirmed something obvious. My half-sister kept recording on her phone, and the room stayed frozen in a silence so heavy it felt like it had weight. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I folded my napkin, thanked everyone for coming, and walked out. That was the night everything ended, and the night everything finally began. But to understand why I left, you need to understand what came before it. My father has always been the kind of man people revolve around, loud without raising his voice, powerful without needing to explain himself. After my mother died when I was 8, something in him hardened, and even as a child, I felt it, like a quiet blame that never needed words. He remarried quickly. My stepmother moved in along with her daughter, Belle, who became the center of everything almost instantly. I was moved into the smallest room upstairs, my mother's photos disappeared, and slowly, without a single announcement, I became background in my own home. I learned early that love in that house wasn't given freely. It was conditional, transactional, something you earned by being useful, quiet, and compliant. So I became exactly that. I worked hard, stayed out of the way, never argued. When my father lost his job 4 years ago, I stepped in without being asked. I was already working as a nurse, pulling long shifts that drained every ounce of energy from me, but I still took on the mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, every bill tied to that house. $2,800 a month, automatically withdrawn from my account. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself this is what family does. But temporary turned into permanent, and instead of gratitude, there was expectation. My stepmother grew comfortable. My half-sister grew entitled. Charges started appearing on my credit card. Clothes, bags, things I never bought. And when I questioned it, I was shut down with a single sentence. "She's your sister." I stopped arguing. I stopped expecting fairness. What kept me there was a promise I made to my grandmother before she died. She was the only person who ever made me feel like I belonged, the only one who called me my girl and meant it. In her final days, she held my hand and told me to keep the family together. I took that seriously, too seriously. I thought if I just held everything together long enough, something would change. It didn't. The breaking point came 3 nights before my birthday, when I overheard my father and stepmother in the kitchen. They weren't arguing, they were planning to use my birthday dinner to pressure me into paying for my half-sister's wedding. 40 people, public setting, no room to say no without looking selfish. It was calculated, deliberate, and worst of all, expected. "She owes this family," my stepmother said. That sentence echoed in my head for hours. 6 years of savings, $52,000, wasn't seen as mine. It was something to collect, something to take. That night, something inside me shifted, quietly but permanently. The next morning, I called an estate attorney my grandmother had told me about before she died. I didn't know why, I just knew I needed to. I set an appointment for after my birthday and decided to get through the dinner first. The dinner itself was exactly what they planned. The room was decorated, the cake was there, but it wasn't really for me. My seat was at a side table near the kitchen. The main table was reserved for my father, my stepmother, my half-sister, and her fiancé. When the announcement came, it wasn't about my birthday. It was about the engagement. Applause filled the room. People gathered around Belle, and I sat there watching my own celebration disappear in real time. Then came the moment. My father called me up, put a hand on my shoulder, and told the room I would help pay for the wedding. Not asked, told. I said no, calmly, clearly, without raising my voice. And that's when he said it. "I wish you were never born." In that moment, everything became clear. Not suddenly, just undeniably. I walked out because there was nothing left to stay for. The next morning, I packed my things, transferred my money to a new account, canceled the credit card, and left. I didn't argue, I didn't explain. I left an envelope on the counter with 4 years of financial records, every payment I had made to keep that house running. Then I walked away and didn't look back. What happened after I left unfolded exactly as you might expect. At first, they dismissed it. They assumed I'd come back. Then the bills started coming. Then the accounts stopped working. Then the truth started surfacing. The house they thought was theirs wasn't. It had been transferred to me by my grandmother years ago. Every payment I made wasn't helping them, it was maintaining something that legally belonged to me. When the family found out, the narrative collapsed. The version of me they had been told, the ungrateful daughter, the selfish one, didn't match the reality of what I had done. My father tried to regain control, called meetings, told his side of the story, but this time, people had seen too much. They remembered that night. They remembered his words. And slowly, for the first time, they started questioning him instead of me. I gave them 60 days to leave the house, not out of revenge, but because I was done carrying something that was never meant to be mine alone. He called me 17 times in one night. After receiving the notice, the first calls were angry. The last one wasn't. It was quiet, desperate. He asked, "Where are we supposed to go?" For the first time, I didn't have an answer for him, and I didn't feel guilty about that, because that question was never mine to answer. I built a new life in a small studio apartment, 400 square feet, thin walls, a space that was entirely mine. No expectations, no silent judgments, just peace. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, and for the first time in my life, I felt something I hadn't felt before, safe. My father eventually reached out again, not with anger, but uncertainty. He said he didn't know how to fix things. I told him I wasn't asking him to fix it, I was asking him to stop breaking it. That was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. I didn't forgive him. Not then, maybe not ever, but I stopped needing him to change for me to move forward. Because that's the thing no one tells you. Closure doesn't come from the person who hurt you. It comes from the moment you decide you don't need their version of the story anymore. Leaving wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It was a boundary, a quiet, firm decision to stop giving pieces of myself to people who only saw my value in what I could provide. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's this. You don't need permission to walk away from something that is breaking you. You don't need validation from the people who benefit from your silence. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't to fight or argue or prove your point. It's to stand up, fold the napkin, and leave the table.